Folks, my condolences to my fellow members of the SVM sports staff. While they were in the office hammering away on the daily section, I was fortunate enough, or maybe unfortunate enough, to be in the comfort of my living room watching the Green Bay Packers Seattle Seahawks game last night. And obviously, if you haven't heard about it by now, you're living under a rather sizable rock, but the Green Bay Packers lose the game on an incredibly controversial call. A catch ruled a touchdown from Russell Wilson, former UW Badger no less, a little salt in the wound for Packer fans, from Russell Wilson to Golden Tate as the time expired, giving the Seahawks a victory. And it was kind of funny. John Gruden said the Packers would have a miserable 6,000-mile flight home. It was just shade shy of 2,000, but just the same, I mean, it's obviously, shook the sports landscape for today, and it's going to for a few days, and it's going to bleed ahead. Dan, I know, as I mentioned, you guys didn't get a chance to see it live, but you mentioned the Twitter reaction. This is something that only comes along once in a while, a sports story of this magnitude.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those deals. My Twitter account's pretty quiet for most of the week, other than Friday nights. Friday nights, you leave the computer for about 5 minutes, you come back, you have about 120 tweets. That's how it was last night. You look away for a couple minutes and there's 120, 300 tweets. All kinds of stuff going on from pretty much everybody in the sports world, from LeBron James to Brandon Paul. And I made the joke last night that was probably the only time those two were mentioned in the same sentence. Everybody pretty upset with the call. I've seen one highlight of it. I live kind of in a bubble where I don't watch a whole lot of sports highlights, which sounds weird as a sports editor. Obviously there was a missed offensive pass interference call, and the touchdown ruling. The thing is, if it's ruled an incomplete pass, I think it's called an incomplete pass after review. As we call a touchdown, I mean, it's hard to overturn at that point. I don't know what your thoughts on that were. I mean, it looked like he had an arm in there, but he might have been enough for ruled as possession, and the tie goes to the receiver.
You're absolutely right. And one of the funny things I encountered was I listened to the Green Bay Packers radio call of it today, and you've got Wayne Larrivee declaring 3 times in a matter of 5 seconds, simultaneously caught. Yeah. So you've got the radio broadcaster. Obviously, they went back and looked at it, and it wasn't necessarily that cut and dried. But if that is in fact the case, then the ball does go to the receiver. I don't think it was. I think it was a blown call. I think it was a bad one, and it might be one of the worst blown calls in NFL history. But what I find unfortunate about the entire situation is we've seen this coming for a while with the replacement officials, and the people who lose are the non-multimillionaires, the fans, because I think that this is the worst possible thing that could have happened to the NFL's product, because now you've got the officials who are not out there in the field, the regular officials, who now have leverage against the league. Then you've got 32 real-life embodiments of Scrooge McDuck, the 32 owners around the NFL. They're not going to see a significant dip in revenue. Everybody says they're going to stop watching or that they're going to cancel their NFL ticket subscription. But they're going to see a slight downtick in revenue, and it's not going to be enough to be of great concern to them. So it's just going to put those two sides farther apart. Everybody says, oh, this is going to get the regular officials back out there. I think quite the opposite.
Well, I think what you're going to see is you're still going to have fans tuning in. Now you're just going to have fans tuning in to see what happens next. In terms of the replacement officials, where they made the mistake at, I think your regular officials would have gotten together before making a call on the field.
Absolutely.
And either your senior ranking official or the guy that felt that he had the better view would have made the call. So you would have had a more definite call on the field. You had two guys saying two different things on the field, and that's where the confusion starts. That just takes practice and time. And the people, if you're a Packers fan, kind of blaming the refs at this point, you kind of have to point the finger at your own franchise. I mean, your owner, he gives the NFL the power it has to, lock out the officials, and they didn't feel like they needed the regular officials, and then locked them out. So, I mean, everyone's to blame in that scenario, and like you said, they make a ton of money.
What's unique about that situation too is if you want to point your finger at the owner, you might be pointing it at yourself as a Packer fan.
Yeah,
it's a publicly owned team.
Yeah, it's that's the issue, and the NFL is making money hand over fist. The concessions it would need to make for the referees probably aren't that much compared to probably what the concessions they had to make for the players were last year.
Yep.
But I mean, there's really not much more you can do. I mean, the players can gripe all they want. I mean, they still have to come to work. I mean, they signed a new CBA last year. They can't go anywhere.
Right.
It's a sort of a moot point until one side or the other caves.
Absolutely, and I think you made the grand overlying point that I've been thinking about a lot this morning. Sports is the greatest reality TV on the tube, in my humble opinion. You're going to have a lot of people who are flat out aren't going to be able to walk away from it, and then you're going to have a lot of people now, perhaps non-sports fans, who are going to watch to see what took place. I mean, I was guilty of that last night. I didn't have a dog in the fight. I was up until 2 in the morning looking at Facebook and reading my Twitter feed and retweeting stuff because, that's hey, it's human instinct. You have something of that magnitude and that authentic of a reaction, and that's what makes reality TV such eye candy. I couldn't pull myself away from it last night, and I know I wasn't alone.
Well, and you think about it, it's sort of that line that all professional sports walk now to becoming more of your almost sports entertainment. Your professional wrestling of, not only are we watching a sport, but we're getting told a story at the same time. Maybe journalists are partly to blame for that, but if you watch an NFL broadcast, from the minute they turn it on, they're starting to feed you storylines. If you watch Sunday night's game, the first storyline you were fed was of the Ravens receiver brother dying, and that's the last story they left you with that night, and that's what they hammered afterwards, even with the, kind of a controversial call in that game at the end with the field goal. That's it. I mean, they're selling stories, and right now the NFL is selling the stories. Can the replacement refs do the job? And people are actually eating it up, even though they might be angry about it.
Absolutely. All those people who, I got a feeling there's a lot of people on a whim last night, canceled their NFL ticket last night. They're going to be scraping and clawing on Sunday, maybe going out to their favorite watering hole to watch the game because they can't pull themselves away from it.
And the only place this is really, when you're really going to run into a problem is if you get replacement refs who realize that to some degree they're working week to week, and I know they're getting paid well for it, but at some point this gravy train will end.
Yep.
And if you just get one ref who decides he could cash in on this game, there are plenty of gamblers out there willing to pony up the money. That starts happening, then the NFL's got a real big problem, between the bookies and between the federal government.
You're absolutely right. So we'll see how things play out over the next few weeks. We'll see how quickly things get resolved because, as I mentioned, in my humble opinion, I think that their world just got a little bit farther apart. So, but hey, it's entertainment. It'll help us fill the section a little bit better tomorrow morning, right?
Didn't need help with that.